It's The World This Week, 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour. The World This Week in partnership with The Daily Beast. We say hello to foreign editor Christopher Dickey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Welcome back. Welcome back as well to Rachel Donadio of The New York Times.
Hi.
Busy week. It's been a busy week all around. Venezuelan reporter and photojournalist Sara Suarez. Always a pleasure. And Stefan Siemens, correspondent for the online edition of the German newsweekly magazine Spiegel.
Hi there, good Abend.
Guten Abend to you as well. The World This Week, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Hashtag World This Week, a week that began with the French right rallying around Francois Fillon and in the primaries, and ending with the stunning decision by incumbent François Hollande not to seek a second term next spring. Even though his popularity was at record lows, a one-term president in France of his own volition, well, that's unheard of. Hollande was heading for a humiliating defeat, it seems, in primaries of the left, or a run for president that ignored those primaries, which would have split his own camp.
As a socialist, because that's my life's commitment, I cannot resign myself to a breakup of the left, to its rupture, because that would take away any hope of winning against conservatism, and even worse, against extremism.
Stefan Siemens, were you surprised?
Yes, I was. I had prepared a paper of him going back and to pick up the challenge, but I think it was a smart decision. I mean, we always in France have looked upon Hollande as being somebody he's a fine person in strategy who knows his
a
tactician, and I think this time. It took him a long time. He would have bowed out earlier. It would have been a more graceful descent. But there, I think he found out, and everyone was telling him, no way to win these elections. Might be even defeated in the pre-elections, by his own party. I mean, that would have been a disaster. So, last exit before the elections, he bowed out, and it's a drama, but it puts an end to a long and almost a devastating 5-year term.
Chris Vicky, you have not always handled him with kid gloves, the outgoing French president.
I think I've made fun of him quite a few times. I mean, how can you not make fun of this president? I mean, first of all,
did you feel sympathy though during his speech?
No, I felt relief, because I think actually it is a good thing that he's done, not just because we don't have François Hollande to kick around anymore, but because it opens up the elections in a way that they were not open before. We'd been assuming all along that the only contest that's going to count in April and May is the contest between Marine Le Pen and the nominee of the Républicains. Now we have a chance of seeing somebody on the left or the center left emerge who could at least be a contender. If it was going to be Hollande, I mean, a 4% approval rating.
He'd gone up to 6.
Well,
yeah.
Well, that's all within the margin of error, right? So it could have been lower than 4%. It could almost have been 0. I mean, they say even his dog was wondering if he was going to vote for him. He was just an incredible loser on the political scene. I think the big question is, was he a loser because he was François Hollande, or was he a loser because of his policies? If it was because of his policies, if that's what people identify, then Valls or whoever comes after him will be facing big problems. But if it was because Hollande himself was kind of a joke, then whoever comes in on the socialist side might have a prayer.
All right. Giving up when you're in power, there are precedents outside of France, but to find them, you have to go to the archives vault.
Lyndon Johnson?
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Rachel Donadio, as a Paris correspondent, what is your outside eye on what happened in France? Is it like a Lyndon Johnson moment?
Well, I have to say, I did feel a little bit sorry for Hollande. It's true that his approval ratings were terrible and that his policies were troubled and that things weren't going well. But just to see someone who's in the kind of fairly reasonable but unpopular, and that stance, which was a kind of centrist position, go down, 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 and then we see kind of the, the right on the rise. Even the left here seems a lot like the right. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the primaries play out, and then whether Fillon manages to stave off Marine Le Pen. That's Hollande had to step down for all this to play out.
That's the thing culturally, right? There's no visceral hate for the man. It's just disdain.
It's disdain, I guess, and also just what has he done? He hasn't been effective enough. But I mean, now we're in this weird era where look at all of these. I don't know. I mean, it's just it's kind of the last blow to the European center in many ways.
Sorry, Suarez?
Well, he was living a nightmare these last weeks with all this bad news about his popularity. But I wasn't surprised because, like, 4 weeks ago, I started doing the exercise of trying to listen to him talking, not like a candidate, but like someone who was living power. And when you do that exercise and you listen to his words, you don't see the candidate that the medias were pointing. He's a candidate. He's going to run again. No, he was saying goodbye and trying to defend what he did these 5 years. So I wasn't really surprised by the decision.
Well, I think you're right. And what Dick said earlier is an interesting point. I think there is two ways that Hollande didn't fulfill the expectations. One was his personal style. We remember against Nicolas Sarkozy, this hyperactive manager of France. He put his campaign forward as to be a normal president. He won, but that's not exactly what the French want to see in the Élysée.
That's not what a normal president is.
They want to see a Republican monarch. And Hollande, in his badly fitting suits, never really, fulfilled the role.
The motor scooter, that killed him.
And then, I mean, not only, politically he made plenty of mistakes, the rise in taxes. Then added on this was this pathetic, personal things he did.
He nipped out on his scooter to go see his mistress.
On the back of the scooter.
With a helmet on.
With a helmet on and a potbelly going around the corner from the Élysée.
Okay, but I just remember when Hollande came to power in 2012, and this is why I have a little bit of nostalgia in part, because think of how much has changed in Europe since 2012. When he came to power, I remember I was covering the Greek crisis for the New York Times, and I was in Athens, and there was this moment of, let's see what happens in France, because maybe if the socialists win, then the balance of power in Europe will shift, and maybe the austerity policies of Merkel, maybe there'll be another counterbalance. And then look what's happened over the last 5 years. It just seems like another world ago.
Well, he caved in basically on all of his promises, on most of his promises. When he was he just represented the state at its best in the moments of crisis. Remember the terrorist attacks in France. Then he was accepted as a leader. But the moment they were over, his popularity plunged again.
He was very interventionist abroad. I mean, look, he saved Mali basically.
Yeah.
When he decided to send troops in right away into Mali, he stopped Al Qaeda from taking Bamako. I mean, this is huge.
No, it's a mixed result, but he'll be the result
did good
come
things,
on his.
But the French just didn't like the guy. I mean, it's not the first time the French didn't like Sarkozy either. So.
But I mean, Suarez, there's an element of this that maybe our viewers need to understand. Is there was a bit of a soap opera that started brewing last weekend. His prime minister effectively throwing him under the bus with a newspaper interview where he said, I might run against him. And then there was this surreal Monday lunch where both sides came out saying, oh, everything's sorted out between us.
But it has been the same thing. I mean, they're all doing meetings that are not meetings. They're candidates and they're not candidates. I mean,
Too much
they have
plotting.
been playing this go back and forwards. Everybody in the politics in France is doing that.
That leaves that prime minister, Manuel Valls, as the heir apparent. What do you think are his chances?
Well, we still have to see what's going to happen with these primaries. I mean, we saw what happened on the right. It was a long fight. Again, we're going to have a left that is going to destroy themselves. They're going to smash heads all around the place. It's going to be a really tough war now, this primary for the left side. I mean, I don't know if Valls is going to be able to really put everybody together around him.
All right, the field is in flux, as Sarah Suarez says. Let's look at a few reactions from the leaders in the polls. Christopher Dickey mentioning conservative Francois Fillon. He says Hollande leaves behind an economically and morally bankrupt France. Tonight, he admitted with lucidity, there's that word again, that he has to leave power. and his term ends in shambles. France is sitting and previous presidents are out, but Fillon and Valls served the pair as prime minister. That's the point that's being stressed by the far-right leader. She compares them to theater actors.
Understudies often have the same flaws as the lead, without having the slightest qualities. The leads have now been kicked out, which was the right decision on part of the French people. Now they will have to understand that understudies pursue the same policies as the leads.
Christopher Dickey?
I think Marine Le Pen is going to win. I think she'll be the next president of France.
No way.
Way. And I'll tell you why. Let's assume that the left tears itself apart and doesn't become a factor in these elections, doesn't make it into the second round. So it's Marine Le Pen up against Francois Fillon. Everybody has essentially moved to the right on questions of identity, immigration, these issues. There's not a lot of air between them. Where there's a big difference between them is Fillon's support for getting rid of 500,000 public employees, lowering taxes, pushing through policies that are, as he likes to say, Thatcherite policies. Whereas Marine Le Pen is saying the state should take care of you, we need to use our resources better. We could, in crunch, we could even have fixed prices for bread and flour and basic things. Now this is maybe crazy economics, but it's the kind of economics that's going to speak to a lot of people. Fillon's won't. And I think, in fact, the election will be decided on those economic programs, and I think Fillon will lose.
Someone was telling me something a few days ago about that, what you're saying. They told me that, ironically, Marine Le Pen was having the most socialist program.
National socialist.
Nationalist socialist, yes, exactly.
In the next election, so that's just crazy.
Yes, still, I wonder. I mean, at this point, people who look at the percentages saying that it's going to be 66 to 34 for Fillon in the second round. The French, election, if this was an election German style, the one with the biggest share of percentage in the first round would win. But in France, only the top two people from the first round will make it to the next. And then, of course, facing Marine Le Pen and the danger of an extreme right-wing president, I think most, or at least enough left-wing citizens of France will decide to vote against, will rally behind Fillon.
People are replaying the 2002 model, when her father, who was a crypto-fascist who basically moved into the world, played with anti-Semitism, played with racism, was generally loathed by a large part of the population who didn't want to play those games. He got into the second round somehow, and then he was crushed.
Yeah.
But Marine is not her father. She's a hell of a lot smarter politician, and she has a much better record.
Stefan talked earlier about to be president of France, a normal president is one who's got the regalian trimmings of a monarch. Certainly, Fillon looks the part more than Marine Le Pen.
Well, yeah, he looks like an aristocratic Catholic.
That's what he
looks like. If that's what you want, then maybe he'll be the next president. But the truth is, I don't think that's what the French want.
But don't you think there's also, speaking to Stefan's point, enough anxiety about what happens when the far right comes to power or could come to power in a country in Europe that could now try to galvanize in that way? I mean, don't you think that
I mean, here's the problem. The things that she's running on, if it's true that you can tap into anger, which it seems to be quite true in lots of places around the world, then those are her issues. She's tapping into anger against globalization, anger against Europe. She hates Europe. Anger against the euro, anger against loss of national sovereignty, anger against the sense that your culture is being taken away from you, anger, multiculturalism. She's tapped into all that anger, and she's done it very, very effectively.
You're absolutely right, but we also had the example of the Brexit, where, it was a reaction of...
Well, yeah, we do.
And now people might have second thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on whether the tides can shift a little. It's true that we see with the election of Trump and Brexit that the anti-globalization sentiment was captured by the right. I mean, the Seattle demonstrations in 1999 are kind of a long way away, and now the right has kind of captured anti-globalization, whatever that means, momentum. So maybe history is on her side, but I also think that now there's just this sense after Trump of people mobilizing and to kind of oppose forces like that. We don't know.
Here's how fear of the unknown. What about fear of the unknown? For instance, pensioners who think, wow, if we leave the euro now, what's that going to involve?
Well, these are issues that clearly Fillon will try to exploit.
The MEDEF, I mean, the MEDEF, Business Leaders Association, has voiced its preoccupation about the program of Marine Le Pen.
But that works to her advantage. Who's she running against? She's running against MEDEF. It's the socialist part of what she's doing. I'm not telling you I'm going to vote for Marine Le Pen, but I think that people are making very serious misjudgments if they just take it for granted that she's not going to win the second round. I think she can win the second round.
Okay, come Monday morning, Europe may have its first far-right head of state since Adolf Hitler. In Austria, the FPÖ's Norbert Hofer crossing swords with the Greens' Alexander Van der Bellen in their final debate Thursday evening.
Look, the difference between us is that for you, there are no good things about the European Union.
This is a downright lie.
You want Austria to exit the EU.
This is a downright lie. Mr. Van der Bellen, a downright lie.
A downright lie? I'm starting to get fed up with this.
Another lie. I already told you.
Our listeners and viewers who are neither deaf nor blind will be able to have their own opinion on who of us is a liar.
You are lying. You're lying again.
Our Vienna correspondent, Anthony Mills, was telling us earlier, Stefan Siemens, that this kind of exchange is very un-Austrian.
Yes, it is. I mean, absolutely. It would be very un-German too. We might be closer to the kind of electoral posture, which is more,
or
trumpet. American, very trumpish.
But I mean, yes, it is. But I mean, it's certainly. Hofer has an advantage, and we spoke about the appeal of Marine Le Pen, and yes, it could set a precedent with far-reaching consequences for the rest of the European right-wing parties, including in Germany, where the AfD already has said that they will form a blue alliance together with the Austrian winner.
All right, I want to get the reaction of the rest of the panel, both to Austria and to what's happening with the vote on the referendum on a constitution in Italy over the Alps there. When we come back, stay with us. You're watching The World This Week.